I was browsing through the local state library website, and they have a lot of online historical publications. Most of them aren't actually hosted online. It's basically an index of what they've got, but a few were hosted online. And one of the ones I came across was Gernsbacks Educational Library number 6, How to Have Fun with Radio. Now this was written in 1938, as you can see on the front cover, 10 cents. So at the time, America was just coming out of the Great Depression, and most houses probably had a radio at that time. Hugo Gernsbacks was a big publisher in electronics, radio, also very big in science fiction. But the thing about his books, they were very cheap, they were written in a very accessible way, and he sold thousands and thousands of them. So he was very much an entrepreneur, targeting his books at the simple, beginner, tabloid type market. He would leave the ultra technical stuff to others, and the market for that would have been small, whereas Hugo was unashamedly aiming at the popular market. So that's where the most number of people were in their knowledge of radio, and that's how he could sell the most books and make the most money. And he was a big publisher, so he was successful in there. Anyway, we'll just have a browse through this How to Have Fun with Radio. Right up here, win $10. Well, $10 would have been a huge amount of money in 1938. If you corrected for inflation, I don't know, maybe $200, $300, maybe $500. But anyway, you could get $10 if you suggested a title or article topic for his books. Now, this is covered up by something else, but yeah, this was one of the ways that he really appealed to ordinary people. The possibility of getting quite a bit of money by suggesting a title for a book. Anyway, the introduction: no matter how much entertainment you can get from your radio receiver, it's still capable of providing still more fun. And we're not just talking about listening to the radio, what the radio stations dish out. With it, you can make records, burglar alarms, perform magic tricks, and practical jokes. So it's obviously people getting into the radio circuitry and doing things. So if you're the typically inventive young American, these are some of the things you can do. And there are various stunts and things. He talks about the stunts will work only on radio sets employing 3 or more tubes. The more tubes, the better. So there are obviously some simpler sets, probably regens. So basically a superhet radio powering a speaker, I think it was called the All-American 5 or something like that, would be suitable for these experiments. A crystal set wouldn't have been any good. A regenerative set, probably no good either. So there's some safety tips about disconnecting all the batteries, checking your work carefully. Okay, so it looks like that you're rewiring the radio set to do different things with it. Probably using the audio amplifier in it and some of the other stages. If you have the average accumulation of radio parts, that implies that you are into electronics or radio and already have a few parts that you can add to whatever you're doing with your radio. First thing here, a talking newspaper. When voices and music come from a newspaper tossed casually onto a chair, well, the shock is almost too much for a nervous man. It's good for a lot of laughs, so how do they do that? Well, the answer is in the next paragraph. The simplest is to make a condenser type loudspeaker out of the paper. So you take 2 sheets of tin foil, the kind that comes in packs of cigarettes, and then you solder long leads to them. Tin foil. Wonder if aluminium foil would work. Possibly not. I'm guessing it needs to be ferrous. Newspaper is placed on a chair and one piece of foil laid loosely between 2 pages. The other piece of foil is similarly laid between the very next 2 pages. So only one thickness of newspaper separates the 2 pieces of foil. Figure 1. Maybe it's an electrostatic speaker or something. Anyway. There's the diagram here. So you've got the 2 pieces of foil, sort of a sandwich with the newspaper. So the idea is that you have the person's voice coming out of the radio and your chair or your newspaper sitting on the chair doing the talking. Now there's some sort of diaphragm here where you're cutting away. Does this have a magnet or not? Apparently not. You cannot solder to tin foil satisfactorily. It melts too readily. Okay, must not be aluminium. Finally connect the primary of a step-up transformer, such as an old audio transformer, across the output. The paper will talk if it tends to rattle too much, so I presume it's quite a high voltage that's going through. Another type of talking paper can be made from an old headphone unit. Soaking a sheet of newspaper in water to which a little glue, hanging out to dry, removing the cap from the headphone. Okay, so it's making a bigger diaphragm, I suppose. Anyway, I'll include a link in the comments if you want to read this book and get any more detail on some of these experiments. So that was the talking newspaper. Now we've got the talking gloves. I presume a similar principle, but it says, a cute stunt for parties is to let your guests hear music apparently coming from your hands. To do this, you'll need an assistant, an old audio transformer, and a pair of kid gloves. Output transformer or loudspeaker is disconnected from the radio set, and the primary is connected. If the set has push-pull output, either use a push-pull output transformer. Okay, that's actually getting quite technical here, assuming you know what a push-pull output stage is. You and your assistant next put on 1 glove each. This is pretty game. This assumes your assistant really trusts you, that you don't electrocute them. What's this? If the subject is a girl, have her pull her hair out the way first. Show how your hands are held. So how does this do it? Is this just voltage going between them? Hang on. The reason you have just made yourself into parts of a condenser type loudspeaker. Your hand and that of your assistant act as 2 plates of a condenser. The palms of the gloves are the dielectrics, which in this case serve as the diaphragms. So you're putting your gloved hand tightly over the ears. So that's a bit of a party trick there. If no gloves are available, you can use good stiff writing paper as the diaphragms. So there's all the circuits there. Radio electric chair. Okay, we've got to remind ourselves this is an American book, so yep, they would be into electric chairs. In some New York nightclubs, the hot seat is a practical joke. which makes even the most dignified patron leap wildly to his feet. A stunt of this sort can be built to work in conjunction with your radio set. It is harmless, that's according to this book, and affords plenty of fun to all but its victims. The device looks most innocent when built into the cushion of an ordinary chair. No one suspects upholstery. At the comparatively low voltages of a radio set's output will not penetrate as many layers of cloth as there are in the average person's clothing. A better means of contact. There are little brushes of fine copper wire fastened point upwards inside the cushion. Well, I reckon you could probably use braid out of coaxial cable for that. Not they had that, but anyway, back then. But before sewing the brushes, okay, so little wire bristles there. Now, this second method should only be used with battery-operated sets, never with electric sets, for it might be dangerous. Okay, so 1938, they obviously still had battery valve-operated sets. I would have thought it would have been mostly electricity. And then, shocks can be given from a set's output in a number of ways, the connections always being made as described above. It is absolutely essential to use the transformer when playing around with sets operated from house lighting lines. Without it, the shock would be painful if not dangerous, and fun ceases where pain begins. And bearing in mind, this is 110 volts AC, the American supply, so they were a little bit less worried about safety than we are with our 240 volts. Anyway, there's some ideas of doctoring the cushion to put these little wisps of wire, and then you'd have high voltages. Visual music. Have you ever seen the music that comes out of your radio set? No. It isn't hard to do without any costly oscilloscope equipment. You can either make a paint pattern in sand or make a lamp glow with rhythmic pulsations. Anyway, I'm not going to read out all this, but let's go straight to the diagram. Picture says 1,000 words. All right, so rubber band, rubber tissue diaphragm. So something, neon tube, okay. What are they doing here? Oh, that looks like a Nipkow disc. So if you spun that around, you'd get all different lines and things dancing around. Yeah, a scanning disc and a motor. Motor may be an electric fan with the blades removed. And so this is the music viewer. Okay, so they modulate the neon tube and they use it to, well, it's not a TV, but you can get all sorts of patterns. The audio, dancing to silent music. One of the finest novelties that this will, if you do any of this will make you like an electronic wizard, especially in 1938. One of the people wouldn't have seen really visual representations or even television then, or let alone computer animation and stuff we've got now. And one of the finest novelties that can be offered at a radio party. Okay, so there's such a thing as a radio party, so presumably there would be this radio wizard magician who would be doing all these weird things with radio. Is silent music heard only by the dancers, but inaudible to anyone who is off the dance floor. They remove the loudspeaker, an old headphone. And presumably you funnel it to the dancer. Oh yeah. Now we're up to page 12. I think this book had like 36 pages, something like this, so about a third of the way through. Musical and talking gadgets, of course. You can make an object with a large vibratable surface talk, as is told when describing the talking door stunt number 11. I don't think we're up to 11, or were we? No. You can make a pie tin talk and sing quite well. when it is simply lying upon the kitchen table. Oh, that would just be getting a winding lots of wire on nails, on a nail, and putting it near a pie tin. Yeah, making a little crude speaker. Is that true? Okay, they do things a bit different here. Metal tabletop and paper. Oh, they're feeding the voltage straight, AC voltage straight through. So they're using the capacitive transducer, thing as a transducer speaker thing. Oh, there's 2 pie tins here with thin bit of paper. Oh, there's a whole stack of them. Wonder if that makes it louder. Okay, so you can have these funny things. It might make you think there's a ghost in the house if you had this sort of stuff. Your tins rattling in the kitchen and no one in there, just connected to the radio. The radio dancer, a doll that dances in time to music, is a novelty that takes but a few hours to construct, yet affords endless hours of amusement. It can be made from an old headphone, but gives better action if an old armature type loudspeaker is employed instead. Okay, so you modify the speaker and connect it to a dancing doll. Okay, so it's again rattling a pie tin or something. Hearing radio through your teeth. Wonder if it works even if you. Wonder if it assumes you've got fillings. Only parts needed: old headphone or loudspeaker coil, piece of fairly heavy soft iron strip, small block of hard rubber. Take the phones apart. It's magnets. Yeah. Okay. So they've got something that rattles around. Oh, that looks like out of telephone. Yep. Things, and yep. Can have your teeth tingling with radio. Radio burglar alarm. A few seconds after an intruder enters your home, he is greeted with a burst of music. Oh, extremely simple. I'm going to guess here. I'm assuming that your radio is on and there's some circuit or wire that is bridged when the burglar steps on a mat or interrupts a trip wire. Let's see what it is. Okay. Okay, closed circuit, making a switch, and it's a tack and looks like a string onto the door. Okay, so where do they connect it? Oh, that looks fun. Home broadcasting. So is it normally open or normally closed? Anyway. It suggests using a flashlight bulb and battery to test it. Anyway. I'm not going to go into too much detail. Anyway, it looks like a switch on a door that does something. There's nothing more startling than a sudden argument between 2 engineers breaking in on a commercial program over a major network, unless it is a radio comment about one of the guests at a party right in your own home. Oh, okay, so you can break in on the radio and say nasty things about people in the party. Can you? Of course, the best means of home broadcasting is to buy a small microphone, especially designed for this purpose. They're priced up 10 cents up to several dollars. So, if you can't afford that, an old headphone can be used. So you are connecting it into, here we are, in between the detector tube. Oh, it must be after the detector tube or something. I suppose they're just breaking into the audio amplifier. If you wish to connect the tubes, many home broadcasting mics have little push buttons so that the mic may be permanently disconnected and put into operation simply by pressing the button. if no such button is present. So how do they connect it to the radio? Oh, okay. It looks like a carbon mic because it's got a series battery. Bottom of sockets. I presume these are tube sockets. The grid cap is removed and one side of the microphone lead is so I suppose maybe it's removing the detector tube. Anyway, then you'd get access to the input of the audio amplifier. The door that talked. Supposing you're alone in a room, no radio set, no people, and all of a sudden the door begins talking to you. So yeah, the thing about Gernsbacks' book is that in the first paragraph or so they paint a picture of what it could be like if you did that experiment, did this little trick, built this thing. So it tries and gets you into the magic of your trick and enthuses you into doing it. Your door must have a fairly thin panel. And how does the door that talked work? This looks... Okay, this is a variation of what I mentioned before with your teeth. It looks like you have a speaker unit, a drive rod, and okay, it vibrates a bit of the door, and so you hear this talking door. So yeah, you could set up a haunted house with this sort of thing. Maybe if you had some sort of door activated switch in a previous experiment, you could run wires to that, so when you opened one door, another door would start talking. And then if you had some more wires, it could go into the kitchen where it would be rattling pots and pans and things, again using that as a microphone. So yeah, you could set up a whole haunted house thing with some of these projects if you build them together. Home recording. How do you do that? Would you like to make records of your own voice singing or speaking? If you would, and if you have a radio set with a phonograph attachment, you can do this all very easily. But the phonograph must have a magnetic pickup, not a crystal pickup. In order to record programs, you will have to use a pre-grooved home recording record. These are made of composition. You also need a home recording needle. Apparently they're just as cheap as normal phonograph records. You'll want... Okay, so is this connecting up using the audio amplifier, making some sort of transducer connected to the needle that indents into your disc, and then you have a microphone connected to it. I'm just guessing here. Hang on, tune into a station, turn the volume up high. So it must be using the radio as an audio source, just for your experiments. What have they got here? Last audio frequency. You can switch either between the speaker or a magnetic pickup. Bent in hook, and it weighs it down, so there's a bit more pressure when you're recording. Here we are. To make a recording of your own voice, connect a microphone to the set, as described in stunt number 10. Okay, so you're either recording stuff off the radio or your voice with that little thing. Making a real telephone with a radio. A real telephone. That's just would be an intercom using a microphone and speaker. Wonder if they make it two-way. Then you'd have to have some fancy switches and things. Looks like... there's a bell. Okay, so press this, move the arm of the switch to C, and it goes ding-a-ling-a-ling, and then both bells would ring. And yeah, okay, there's quite a complicated switch here. So you're switching from looks like 3 positions. 3 positions or 2? Looks like it's 3 positions. So 2-station intercom. Now our 2 radio set. I would have thought it would be switching the polarity of the audio amplifier. So is it 1-way or 2-way? Anyway, it will no doubt work. Reluctant radio. Your guest tunes in a program, but as soon as he gets it satisfactorily adjusted and sits down, the set stops playing. Okay, in which case you can set yourself up as a radio repair person and charge the money to fix it up. Maybe that's the trick. Trick can also be arranged in a way that the set stops working as soon as anyone goes near it, or when anyone calls stop. This is not really voice control, as has been said a trick. The heart of the device is a special switch. Okay, it's just a thing that short circuits the speaker. So yeah. The switch may now be concealed under the cushion of a chair. Sitting on it stops the set. Okay, so as soon as a person goes into their chair, sits on the seat, it stops it. You just got to conceal the wires, that's all. No power radio set. Well, isn't that a crystal set? Everyone expects a radio receiver which uses tubes to require some sort of power. A set which apparently has no connections. Yes, all the tubes lit and operates a speaker is somewhat of a marvel. It is easy for your visitors to see, for it stands upon a box made of glass. Must be some sort of optical illusion, is it? What are they doing here? I've got a fake antenna and a fake ground in a flower pot. Foil cemented to edge of glass. Okay. Power plug under the base. They must be sending the power up the foil. Well, that's the end of this Fun with Radio book by Hugo Gernsbacks. And of course, it wouldn't be a Gernsbacks book if there were not advertisements for all the other books. Just to give you a flavour: Radio for Beginners, How to Read Radio Diagrams, Radio Dictionary, Simple Electrical Experiments, Television, all about aerials. So yeah, just 10 books, and they're fairly short books, from 30 to 60 pages, with a lot of illustrations. Positively the greatest 10-cent volume in radio books ever offered to the public. So yeah, the idea is you sell lots of books, you make your books cheap, but you sell them often. So that is a look at Hugo Gernsbacks' Fun with Radio book. Now, if you want to read it, then you can just visit the State Library of Victoria website, and I'll give you a link and you'll be able to find this book. And speaking of books, I've written 1 or 2 books on various topics of ham radio, so if any of them are interesting to you, then just check my website, VK3YE.com, or search their titles on Amazon. So hope you enjoyed it, and let me know if you want more hysterical videos, and they are quick to do, very easy for me to do, so it shouldn't be a problem if lots of people enjoy them, of doing these sorts of stuff dug up from the past.